Hey, good morning, everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's market overview and special treat for you. A full list of stocks to watch, including the list that I would usually just send out to the pro members, give you an idea of what we do here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody's having a fantastic weekend. Let's take a look at what we've got coming up for next week. In terms of economic calendar, not a whole lot. We do have a couple of things: durable goods orders, core capex, existing home sales, flash PMI. So we've got a couple of things that could impact the markets, but not a whole lot on the economic data front. We seem to have the rhetoric for the China trade deal that kind of has toned down. So really, what we're looking at for next week, it's going to be all about earnings, right? We've got some big names reporting next week and in a pretty broad array of industries. So it should be a pretty eventful week with earnings. So just taking a quick look here, I mean, there are some really big names, of course, that I think we want to pay close attention to. I'm not necessarily looking at them for trading opportunities, but Coca-Cola, Snap, I think is one that could actually be a trading opportunity. It's had a big run, pulling back ahead of the earnings, but Visa, Biogen, you know, Caterpillar reports next week. We've got PayPal and Tesla and Facebook and Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Those are big names. I'm very interested in Lockheed Martin, and I think Raytheon also reports. I'm interested in those names, just how they may impact the sector. It's been one of the strongest sectors out there. There are still a couple of names that I like within that space that I would like. One I'd like to pull back for an entry opportunity. One I'd like to see pull back to potentially add. I've traded in and out of this thing. I've got some lottos and like to be able to add to that position on a pullback. Facebook, like I said, big name. Amazon, Google, Intel, right? 3M. We've got some big names. Twitter, I think, is another one that could be interesting. They report Friday. Newmont Mining, right? Gold in general has had a nice run. What's Newmont going to do for that space? So definitely some big names to keep an eye on for next week. Let's take a look at the overall health of the markets, the indices, and certain sectors. Let's take a look and see what's happening there. So IBB, we are seeing, we're testing the 50-day as potential support. It's been kind of a weak space. Actually, it was one of the first sectors to really break down. I was thinking maybe it could be the sector to lead us up, and it's really kind of struggling here. So testing the 50-day as support. We'll see if we pull back and maybe test this trend line. Maybe we put in a higher low and a hold. That would be okay. But if we break down and we go in and put a lower low in, that would not be a good thing for IBB. IWM has been really consolidating, and it has not participated in the recent rally, and that's a little disconcerting. We'll have to see what happens this week. I don't think that, we're not going to get a lot of small cap earnings this week, so we might just continue to consolidate and chop around a bit. But it is putting in kind of an interesting little flag pattern there. Would like to see small caps participate and maybe kind of take the reins, and start moving higher. So we'll have to see how that plays out. IYT Transportation consolidating just over the 50 and 200 day. Got JetBlue reporting this week. I mean, it's an interesting space, and you kind of want to see transports remain healthy. Let's see what happens this week. Qualcomm, or the triple Qs, right? Big week for tech. Actually kind of looking like we saw a little bit of weakness. We tried to rally on Friday, pulled back, closed towards the low of the day, but well above the 50-day and 200-day moving averages. Maybe we come back down, we test the 50-day. I don't know. we'll have to see how it plays out. But big week for tech and the Qs. SMH, we did manage to take out this little trend line, this little area of price resistance. So, with it being a big tech week, AMD, I believe, reports this week. So, semis, I think, are another one to keep an eye on. It's been one of the strongest sectors through this entire bull run. And we'll see if maybe we can go out and take out some new highs in the semi space. But we are coming up to an area of potential resistance, which could act as a double top. So we'll have to see how that plays out. S&P 500 consolidating near all-time highs. Look, this has been one of the most hated bull runs ever. Everybody and their brother seems to be looking for the end of it, trying to call it, and at some point they'll be right. We will get some kind of a correction, maybe a bear market, but right now it's we're still demonstrating a lot of strength out there. We'll have to see how this plays out this week, but we're continuing to consolidate just below all-time highs, and who knows? We'll have to see how it plays out. But TVIX, UVXY, if we see some big time weakness and we start to roll over, of course, volatility will pick up, and that will create an opportunity for short-term trading opportunities. Day trades, maybe short-term swing trades, but you got to make sure that you play it size appropriate. Don't be holding a big position overnight if we get a spike in volatility, because you know what? We can get news out overnight and that volatility gets sucked back out of the market. So you'll just have to be careful with these. They're levered ETFs, so you got to be careful. TVIX, UVXY, if volatility picks up, could be an opportunity for short-term trade. XAR, aerospace and defense, been one of the strongest sectors. Like I said earlier here, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, all reporting. Let's see what happens with that space. It's in consolidation mode. Do we break out to new all-time highs? I don't know, but it has definitely been one of the stronger sectors out there. Home builders, a little bit of a pullback on Friday, but still above the 50-day moving average. Maybe we come back and we test that 50-day, also test this little trend line here. Home builders still actually looking fairly strong. XLB, building materials. I think that's worth keeping an eye on, the building materials space. FCX could be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But building materials, that's like Home Depot. There's all kinds of stuff within that ETF, but actually holding up very well, consolidating. I think it's a space to keep an eye on. XLE Energy, so been a tough space for a long time. Actually got to have an energy name on this week's watch list that I think could be interesting. We'll see how it plays out, but for short-term trading opportunity, not necessarily long-term play. I mean, you could start dipping, but who knows when this space is going to turn around. But do have a potential reverse head and shoulders pattern here on the XLE. If the tensions in Iran continue to escalate and the Strait, then maybe we see some more strength in oil and potentially we see some strength in energy. But worth keeping an eye on the space. XLF, right? We had lots of earnings last week in the financials. Had a difficult time here at the trend line. Let's see what happens if we pull back to the 50-day moving average. Those typically more long-term hold swing type plays and maybe more attractive on a pullback to areas of potential price support. XLP continues, consumer staple, continue to grind higher. Finding a little bit of resistance, pulling back a bit. I think there are a lot of names in that space that are have some pretty high valuations. Probably be cautious in that space, and if you've got some names that you've made a nice profit in, probably wouldn't be a terrible time take a little off the table and harvest those profits, right? So XLV healthcare struggling also along with the IBB. Potentially pull back here to the 50-day moving average, but healthcare taking a little bit of a breather. Consumer discretionary also finding a little resistance, pulling back a little bit. Maybe we come back and test the 120 area, could act as potential price support. XOP, oil and exploration, boy, not looking good, right? Compared to the XLE. You know, potential double bottom here, maybe triple bottom, right? Double bottom. Tough space, man. Tough space. Oil and exploration, tough space. But you know, maybe we're at an area where we get some kind of a bounce play. XRT, as you know, if you follow me, I'm not a big retail fan. There was one, what was it, the Dillard's or whatever, that had a huge spike on Friday. Have no idea why. Pretty big move though. Retail in general, I'm just not a fan of the space, but it does appear as though it is trying to hold on to the 50-day moving average. So, yeah, it was Dillard's. Dillard's big pop. Look at that move on Friday. I have no idea. Small float looks like, if I can believe TC2000, which has been off on their floats lately, so I don't believe it. But could be just a short squeeze. I don't know. But that was a pretty interesting move on Friday. All right, so before I get into the list of stocks to watch, let's just take a look real quick at the T2106 and the T2108, which are a couple of indicators I like to look at weekly just to see, are we overbought, are we oversold? Right now, we're kind of fiddle in the middle. We've been fiddle in the middle actually for a while. Over 70, we're overbought. Under 20, we are oversold, and we're just kind of fiddle in the middle. We're at on T2107, which is the amount of stocks over the 200-day moving average, sitting at the 50 level, and T2108, the amount of stocks over the 40-day, sitting around the 60 level, 50 level. So we're just really kind of in that's indicative of what the market's been doing, right? We've kind of been consolidating sideways. We're not oversold, we're not overbought, we're just chopping around. So we're not at an extreme in either direction. All right, so let's take a look at the list. It's a pretty big list. Pretty big list here, but let's get into it. ARCT, so biotech name, inherently biotechs are higher risk, right? So not really something that you want to consider for swings or long-term holds unless you know a lot about the company and they've got a great cash position in their late stage, you know, phase 3, or already have an approved drug. Maybe they're just going to commercialization. Then, you know, if you know all that stuff, then maybe you consider swing or long-term hold. But ARCT, very nice little breakout. So this thing gapped up, consolidated, nice tight range, got some volume on Friday, curling up, taking out little flag pattern. Maybe we get a red to green and continuation of that move. This is a pretty big spot that it broke above, right? So you kind of have a flat top breakout here as well as a nice little bull flag breakout. Worth keeping an eye on this one for potential trading opportunity, right? You pull back to 1020 or so, 1020, 1030 or so. Maybe that holds as support. What was resistance, you look for it to hold for as support for a bounce. But pretty nice move in ARCT and worth keeping an eye on for potential continuation. SB, so this had a very nice little bull flag breakout and flat top breakout over the $2 holla. Nice round number roll. Pretty interesting setup there, right? So broke out on Friday. Maybe look for a red to green continuation type move. There is another shipper that is reporting that is on this list this week. But pretty good looking setup here on SB. Now, We got some resistance probably here in the 250, 245, 250 area. You know, maybe you get a red to green, you take some off at 250. You want to hold and see if you can take out the 250 level, get up to 275, $3, where you've got some other potential price resistance. That could be an option. So looking for a short-term, you know, day trade or swing opportunity in SB, but I like the breakout that this thing had on Friday. Looking for a red to green. Dean Foods. So look, this company has a tremendous amount of debt. Maybe they go out of business. I don't know. Kind of got a little reverse head and shoulders pattern going on here. Potential flat top breakout over a $1.20, $1.25. You got the 50-day moving average there. You know, just for a trade opportunity, you know, Dean Foods been around a long time, packaged food play. Potential acquisition target, I don't know. Maybe they just wait until they go out of business and then, you know, pick over the scraps. But did have a little bit of a bounce on Friday. If it can take out the 50-day for a trade, short-term trade, I think it's worth keeping an eye on. I think potentially you get a test up into the $1.50 area. That's a big percentage move on a dollar stock. This is a thick stock. I think there's a big short interest there. You know, just as a potential quick trade, could be worth keeping an eye on. TLSA, now don't confuse this with Tesla, okay? TLSA, biotech name. This thing gets halted about, I don't know, I think every day. Trades extremely thin. 4,000 shares traded on Friday. Now this thing is, it's got some data coming up, I believe, some clinical data coming up, and it could move the stock. It'd probably be difficult to trade unless you've got some significant volume, and it'll probably get halted about 45 times in a day if it does. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it's got some pretty wide range moves, but you've got to have some volume in order to trade it. Let's see if this data that's coming out provides an opportunity, but it's worth at least having on the radar and recognizing that if it does have some news, don't chase it, right? You don't want to chase it because of the small float and the fact that it halts a billion times, but could be worth at least keeping an eye on. Wrecker. So Wrecker was on last week's pro member list. It was up about 50% for the week. Looking for a 2 break. Did I get the trade? I didn't. Hopefully somebody in the pro member got the trade because it had a beautiful breakout. I like to do research on companies like this. I think it's an interesting product. I think interesting potential story stock. My issue is that I have sent these guys at Investor Relations, I've sent them 2 requests and have not gotten a response. And as a matter of fact, you know, I've got several companies that I've sent Investor Relations questions to, and I get nothing. I get no response, and it is really irritating for me. But and I plan on writing up a little article on that in the near future here. I mean, why have an investor relations department or an investor relations contact if they can't contact you, if they won't contact you, right? As a potential investor, or even a current investor, right? A shareholder. Can't get a response from investor relations. I think that says something to me about the overall company. If you can't handle investor relations properly, what else aren't you handling properly, right? So anyway, from a technical standpoint, I like this stock. It did come up right into an area of price resistance. Look at that. Almost to the T, right? Came up into 346, found resistance, pulling back. Now it's flagging underneath that. Now, I think maybe Wrecker is interesting. I like this. I like the name too, Wrecker, right? Wrecker. Pull back to the 8 EMA, see if it holds a support. Maybe even pull back all the way back to the 20-day in the $2.20 range. Maybe that's an area of support for a bounce. I want to get a hold of investor relations. I want to talk about their capital needs. It's a small stock, trades thin. You know, it's had a big move. Think about that. It's gone from $1 to 3.50. That's a big move in a short period of time. So a pullback or a consolidation period would not be a big shock there. Solo. So electric vehicle play. Kind of an interesting looking setup there on the daily. Had to gap up. Right, big spike, pulled back on lower volume, got a little volume on Friday, could be trying to take out this little flag, maybe a 3 test and roll. Short-term trading opportunity is what I'm looking for there, day trade or short-term swing. Coda, so I've been all over this Coda. I did a lot of work on it this weekend. I think this is a pretty interesting company. They had a little spike last week, couldn't figure out why, and then I found an article. These guys were testing out a helmet for deep sea with the Navy, deep sea diving, and apparently that helmet is now being tested by NASA as well. I think this is a very interesting story. It had a big run, right? It had a very big run. It pulled back, had a little pop, gapped up. I think that was off of earnings, pulling back, consolidating. Then on Friday, we got a little bit of volume reclaim of the 50-day. I like this for a long-term holder swing. Now, it's richly valued, but I'd like to get a starter going in this. And, you know, this is the kind of name that if it pulled back, you know, to the 930, 940 area, back to the 200-day, I would look to add. So maybe get a starter going somewhere between $11.50 and $13. Just get a little starter going, so I keep this thing on my radar. Pull back into the 940 area. I think it's an opportunity to add. Like I said, this is more of a long-term swing or hold. I think they've got some new products that are hitting the market, and not just the helmet, but if they announce, you know, real positive results with the Navy and NASA, that could be a big deal for this company. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. Aerospace defense name, right? If we see some weakness out of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, maybe this one sees some weakness and sympathy and creates that opportunity to jump on in. AVTR, recent IPO, nice looking daily here. Now, you know, in the Alpha Wolf trading community, we've got a guy that specializes really, I mean, he's really good at IPOs, and I have to ask him about this one, but kind of like this fact that it pulled back to this area of price support, bounced right off it, and man, we could be looking at potentially going back up, testing this $19 area and taking out, making some new highs. So interesting looking setup there on AVTR. PSNL, another one that is a recent IPO. Now this one has been in a downtrend, curling up a little bit, maybe testing this trend line. Trend line break could get interesting on PSNL. Day trade, short-term swing. AGRA. So I like AGRA. It's actually had a pretty nice move already from 350, testing $4, but I like round number rolls. Reclaim the 50-day, had a little bit of volume. Stochastics are curling up. MACD is gone positive. It's a pretty good looking setup here on Array. I'm not sure when these guys report earnings. That's something that you need to be aware of. I think they, you know, probably reporting earnings fairly soon, but this thing could be headed towards the 200-day moving average and possibly up to about the 440 range where you've got some price resistance. So looking for a red to green type move on Array, but for a short-term trading opportunity there. PLMR, another recent IPO that has been consolidating, putting in a nice base and started to break a little bit on Friday. I think this is a fairly small float, but this one looking like you got a potential flat top breakout here, worth keeping an eye on. Maybe you get a red to green, you know, pull back to 25.80 or so, and then you get that. Or if we take out, you know, $27 with conviction, you're in blue sky. So worth keeping an eye on PLMR. I'd much rather have it on a pullback to an area of support and bounce than chase a breakout, but worth having on the radar. Now, Range Resources, this is the oil and gas play that I said was on this week's list. They report this week, and when do they report? They report Thursday. Now, had an analyst come out and downgrade a bunch of names within the space just last week. This is not a good-looking long-term trend, right? But if they happen to, beat and maybe give a good guide, this could get a nice pop. I think you're at all-time lows on Range Resources. Hold on a second. And they announced last week that they had an asset sale. They sold off about 634. They're getting about $634 million. The issue with a lot of these companies is the amount of debt, and they're deleveraging their balance sheet. They have positive cash flow. The sale, I think, is, probably a good thing. That's why it got a little bit of a bounce on Friday. We'll see if this has any legs to it. Likely going to have some resistance in about the 650 area, $6 to 650 area. Take that out, you're breaking a long-term trend line. Then you've got to deal with the 50-day moving average and some price resistance around $7. But from where it's currently sitting, it's a pretty nice move. So worth keeping an eye on Range Resources as a potential swing opportunity. If they beat and raise, this one could be interesting. So worth keeping an eye on Range Resources. AQB. Full disclosure, I own it. I still own some. I actually sold some after this big pop. I sold into the strength. I have a small position left that I held just in case it decided to keep on running. And now what I'm looking for actually is if it were to pull back into the $3 range, $2.85 range, I would actually look to add back to the position, right? So I'm watching this one. If it is starting to flag out here a little bit, maybe it's been holding this 8 EMA. If it loses that, we'll see how it acts at around the 329 area. See if the 20-day holds it as support. If not, then we come back and check out that 50 EMA and potential price support right around 285 or so. But interesting looking setup there, and like I said, would like to add on a pullback. SNES, the only reason why this is here is because there was an insider buy. I'm big on the insider buys. They did an offering at $1.35 per share in July. Insiders participated, buying $1 million worth of the shares at $1.35. CEO picked up 696,000 shares. So, look, the way I view it is insider bought them at $1.35. Chart's not looking all that great. If it were to break down and pull back, say, to the 200-day moving average and some potential price support around $1.10, it might be worth taking a flyer there for a bounce, right? Short-term trading opportunity. Looking for it to break below the 135, test down here to the 200-day moving average. I think it could be worth maybe taking a little stab at. So that's the story on SNES. Let's keep moving here. IVAC. So I put out a trade plan for the pro members on IVAC. They announced a $40 million contract on Friday. That is the largest contract they've ever received. Prior to that, they had I think it was $29 million contract that they received. So all in all, this company's got about an $83 million backlog. The stock really didn't react. What I really like about the stock is if you go back on a weekly time frame, a longer time frame, this $4 seems to be holding as potential support, right? And you can go back to 2013 on that, right? So for the 4 area seems to be acting as a good area of support, good base to bounce from, good news with the large contracts, and the stock just didn't react. So looking to get a swing going in this thing, and could potentially add if it were to pull back to the $4.20 range, put a stop say below 390, something to that effect. But I do like this quite a bit as a potential turnaround play, and I'm looking as more of a swing or long-term hold consideration. SVMK, Silver Monkey, flirting with the 17 bucks, flirting with the trend line, or Survey Monkey, not Silver Monkey. Tried to break out over 17 last week, pulling back. On a pullback to say 15.75 could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. It seems to be holding, 16 bucks maybe. Seems to be holding as support. Worth keeping an eye on SVMK, and I think that's more of a swing or long-term hold consideration. Luna, full disclosure, I have a little starter in Luna. It had a nice little pop after I got into it. I didn't sell it because I just had a little piece, right? I like the story. This company's got no debt, small float. It's a little richly valued, and that's why I just took a small starter. But, pull back to 469. 450, I could look to add to that position. I look at it as this is a pretty big flat top breakout off of a pretty large base. Come back, test the top of that base, and look to add and hold on to this. Like I said, no debt. Just did an acquisition, bought a company for cash. Fiber optics monitoring. I like this space. I like this stock, and would like to look to add to my position and build it out a bit. But definitely worth keeping an eye on. Luna, IPI, full disclosure, I own this one. Just a small piece. I've played this several times in the past. There's insider buying in the 3 and change range. This is agricultural inputs has not been hot recently. I think these guys might be looking to report fairly soon, but this is flagging out. Right, flagging just below the 360, looking for a break over 360, and I think you get a forward test. Potentially you can go back up and test those highs around 430. Probably needs a catalyst, probably needs earnings in order to do that, but worth keeping an eye on this setup here. It's had a nice little run. It's been consolidating, looking for it to take out 360. ERII was also, I think this was on last week's stocks to watch list, or last week's or weeks before for the pro members. Nice big pop, got out of the upper Bollinger Band, pulling back. Had a little announcement of a small project last week. I actually would like to see ERII pull back to about $11, maybe the 1090 area, and jump in it there. This is a fairly small float on ERII, but great looking setup on the daily time frame. Like I said, I'd like to see it pull back to 11, test that area of support 1090, and maybe jump in there for a swing. EYEN, so another one that had some insider buying, right? So they did an offering, $2.78 was the offering price. The CEO bought 233,000 shares at $2.78. So had a nice little pop up to about 360. It seems to be pulling back. So, I'm looking for a double bottom test, actually. Pull back to 250 for a bounce. Day trading opportunity. That seems to be some pretty good price support in that area. That's what I would be looking for there, is just a pullback to that area and bounce play. Probably, it's a biotech. It is late stage, I believe, phase 3. But just looking for a short-term trading opportunity there. IDSY, very, very thinly traded stock, 9.6 million shares in the float. But, I had a little pop and then pull back. It's trying to take out $6. It was consolidating just below the 200-day. You got a golden no, you don't have the golden cross yet. Potentially, that's coming, maybe. Right, 50 days sloping up. Um, Maybe this pull, got a reverse head and shoulders pattern kind of looking on the daily. Maybe a pullback into the 570 area could be a very interesting area of price support, higher risk because of this. It's so thinly traded, but worth keeping an eye on it. 10% owner bought shares um, between 518 and $6, and look at where we're at. We're kind of right there at $6. Insider buys. Two directors bought some at 615. So there's some support in this area. So pull back to 550, 560 could be an interesting spot to take this one for a higher risk swing because of the thin trade. GNC. So look, we kind of called this out in the chat room with the pro members at in the $1.40 range, right? Looking for at a double bottom, and it did. It double bottomed and it had a nice little run. One of the members was able to participate in that run. Unfortunately, I did not. But consolidating here after a nice little move up just below the $2 holla, right? We got some price resistance there. These guys report Monday before the open. Now, we're either going to see this thing maybe come back down and retest the 150, or maybe go back down and test that bottom, or we could potentially see this thing break out, right? It's not a big float, and I think there's a pretty decent sized short interest in GNC. So this could get interesting if they were able to provide a good guide and report a strong number. So GNC, look, if it gaps up off of a good report, I wouldn't chase it. Look for an intraday setup, but definitely worth keeping an eye on for Monday, right? Could be an interesting play if they have a good earnings report. Could present a day trading opportunity. CBLK. Coming up into this 1950 area of potential price resistance, right? I'm not sure when these guys report. I thought the daily looked good for a potential flat top breakout. Maybe this pulls back one more time into the $17 area. That could be an interesting spot to take it as potential support. Put your stop below the 50-day moving average. Like I said, I'm not sure. Oh, they report August 1st, so they'll be reporting not this upcoming week, but the week after. So, interesting setup on the daily for CPLK. You do have the golden cross. You got the 50-day that broke above the 200-day moving average. Could this take a little breather ahead of earnings? Potentially pull back and test that 17 area. Could be worth a shot at that level. MYOS, full disclosure, I own it. It's consolidating, kind of have a reverse head and shoulders pattern here as well, right? Consolidating, potential flat top breakout, trades very thin. Look, I'm a big believer in this in the product. It's I give it to my dogs. And I've seen amazing results with Buddy. I know that sounds hokey, but it's the truth. And because of that, and I've spoken to the CEO, I've spoken to investor relations. I think these guys have a really fantastic product. It's not just for dogs, it's for animals, it's for humans, to fight muscle atrophy. And I think it's a pretty compelling story. They just need to generate more sales. But this is in an interesting spot, and I'm trying to add to the position. I've been trying to add for the last couple of weeks, actually. I'll pull back to 150, 140 or so. I would look to add for this long-term hold. Higher risk because it's a speculative, thinly traded stock, but worth keeping an eye on Myos. If it takes out the 175, 180 with conviction, could get a nice little day trading opportunity as well. All right, AUY, gold name, right? Reporting had a big run right at an area of potential resistance, potential $3 holla. These guys report. When do they report? They report on Where is it? I think it's Thursday. Anyway, I'm not sure what day they report, but they report, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on. We'll see. Yamana. Where is Yamana? Why is it? I can't find it on my list here. But, gold's had a big move, right? This is right at an area of resistance. I wouldn't be shocked if this were to pull back if they disappoint with earnings. Maybe pull back to the 240 area, see how it acts there as potential support. Keep moving here. I'm almost done. I know this is a long video, but hopefully it's worth your time, right? INFN, full disclosure, I am in the stock, and I am underwater in the stock, actually. I started buying probably a bit early. There's a gap to fill on this. Had a nice couple of day run after they did a webinar with an analyst. It's at an area of potential price resistance. We could see this actually pull back. Not sure when these guys report earnings, but there is a gap to fill up on the daily up to about the 200-day moving average. Could be an opportunity. I'm actually considering a potential add. If this were to pull back into back below the $3 area, I would probably look to add. There's some speculation that these guys did an acquisition that was a little too big for them to swallow, and now there's questions about whether they'll be able to even stay afloat as an entity. The insiders have been buying 332, 315 area. They bought higher in the $5 and $6 range. A lot of debt, but they expect to get back to cash flow positive by end of 2019, early 2020. If they can do that, if they can achieve that, then I think that would be a very good thing for the company, a good thing for the stock. CFO announced that they were leaving. That, I think, put a little pressure on the stock as well. Looking for a new CFO there, depending on who they get. That could wind up being a catalyst, but it's more of a long-term hold turnaround story type play for me. And like I said, if it pulls back into the 290 area down or retest the 260 level, I could look to add to my position there. I'm willing to be patient with it. STNG, that's the one shipper that I said is reporting this week, and pulling back to the 50-day moving average, an area of potential price support. Let's see what happens if these guys report a decent. It's got a big cup with handle kind of look on the daily as well. I mean, it's got a couple of things going on there. If they disappoint, I'm looking at this one as kind of create sympathy plays within the shipping space if they report a good number, and they report Monday morning, so we'll know fairly quickly whether or not shippers could be in play. And let's see, A10, I like this one. It's had a big move actually, but looking for a pullback to the $7 area, area of potential price support, right? So finally broke over there with some conviction. Maybe look for a pullback to an area to that area for support for a bounce. You see how it acts as it pulls back to that level. LPTX, I think these guys have some potential news coming out. It's got an interesting setup on the daily, kind of flagging out a little bit. Biotech name. Not sure when the event is, but they just did an offering at $1.75 per share. It's got an interesting setup on the daily. Could be a trading opportunity if it gets some news. CVRS. You know what? This isn't the one. Hold on. I think I did the dyslexic thing. Hold on. Yep, I did. It's supposed to be CRVS. CVRS I've been watching as well, but CRVS caught my attention. It's got a fairly small float. It's consolidating just above the 50-day moving average after the big pop higher. Got a little bit of volume, flirting with the $6 holla. Could be a day trading opportunity there for CRVS. And that is it. That is the entire list of stocks to watch for this week. It's going to be an interesting week, right? Earnings are definitely going to be center stage. There could be some potential sympathy plays out there. Worth keeping an eye on that. Let's see what the overall market does. If we roll over, keep an eye on volatility. And that's it. I hope you found this helpful. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, share it. I would appreciate that. And that's it. Good luck trading next week. Don't chase. Always have a plan. Know your risk reward. And I'll see you all next week.